then I think that there's a great beauty there because it points to something. Why is it that way? I think it points to a designer. For example, if you look at the laws of physics, okay, well, the laws of physics are such that the world is a particular way. And to change things, for example, if you were to change the distance of the Earth from the sun, you make it a little bit closer and we're going to heat up and fry. You put it a little bit further away, we're going to freeze. Okay. You change the distance of the moon from the Earth, it's going to mess up rotational issues. And there's all kinds of physical phenomenon in the world that had to be just so. And I find a beauty there because it points to something beyond itself. I think it points to a designer. And so there's books written, for example, The Privileged Planet by Guillermo Gonzalez. It's about this kind of thing. And so that's another kind of avenue for beauty. So I've been speaking for a while here. We could go in more depth, but I think that lays out some major categories of beauty that I see.
Absolutely, yeah. I love that. You wrote an article, looks like it was in 2012, called The Laws of Nature and the Natural versus Spiritual Mind. If you could talk about that article and what that's about. I love Romans 1:20, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made. And I just love that, the natural laws in creation. If you could go into depth about that.
Yeah. So Romans 1:20 really is the theme verse of that article in a lot of ways. And so it says that God's invisible attributes, so first of all, they're invisible. We can't see them. And that's likened unto that abstract part of math. They've been clearly seen through what has been made. Now, the clearly seen with our eyeballs through what has been made, things that we can feel of the material world, that's that two parts in the categorization that I laid out at the beginning. So God's invisible attributes have been clearly seen through what has been made. It says the invisible attributes, his eternal power and his divine nature. So these are things about him. And then at the end, it says, so that they are without excuse. So it is testifying to everyone who beholds this in nature that God made it. And so it's to draw people to him. So I think that's just what we're discussing. And so in the paper, the macro theme is that this invisible nature that created the world is the same nature that is not only manifested and we can see and get insight from it, but through the work of God, through Jesus Christ, his son, dying and atoning for our sins and giving us new life in him. That new life in him includes his very nature that created the world coming to dwell inside of us. Now, for those who are not Christians and familiar with the Bible, that is I think a phenomenal, a radical, probably even offensive claim. But yet that is what the Bible teaches. And so that's the thread that I pull through the article. And so I start off by showing a group of thinkers that recognize the nature of God in the world, but are not Christians. And so I have a quotation from Euclid and some ancient Greeks, and then I move up into modern times, like Albert Einstein. And just historically, a lot of thinkers have recognized that there's something there with this with the math and the world. And one thing that I like to show my students is I show them a clip from the TV series called Numbers. And it's a secular show, but the tagline in the clip is, math is more than just logic. It's rationality. It's using your mind to solve the greatest mysteries that we know. Well, that's an acknowledgement of this thing that I'm talking about in Romans 1:20. And so I start there, and then I move into the Old Testament. And in the Old Testament, there are some passages in Jeremiah. Let's see, it's in Jeremiah 31 that basically says, this is God speaking to his people Israel, that as surely as the sun comes up every day, so sure is my love for you. And in that saying, it says the ordinances of the world in the sun coming up every day. And the word ordinance is the same word that's used in the legal language there in the Old Testament. In short, it's natural law. You have, even in the Old Testament before Jesus, the establishment of this natural law that God has put laws into the world. And so we got the secular mind, and then I move into the Old Testament mindset, and I tease out a few other things there. And then I move into the New Testament, and there's a verse. I'm going to go ahead and look this one up. It's in 2 Peter chapter 1, and he's talking about the divine nature. It's verse 4. For by these he has granted to us his precious and magnificent promises, so that by them you may become partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world by lust. And so that's part of the new life that we receive in God, is to become a partaker of the divine nature, literally dwelling within us. And so we started with Romans 1:20. God made the world by his divine nature. And we end in 2 Peter 1:4, where the divine nature actually comes to indwell us. This is not a pantheistic, we're becoming the God of the universe type of thinking, but it's a subordination in that he created us and we're under him, but he actually is so intimate with us as to even dwell inside of us.
Interesting. Another verse that I love that you put in that article is Job 38:31 through 33, which says, "Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades, or loose the cords of the Orion? Can you lead forth the constellation in its season, and guide the bear with her satellites? Do you know the statutes of the heavens, or fix their rule over the earth?" Could you talk about what context you use that in, and just also what you think of it in general?
Yeah, the last part there about the statutes of the earth, it's the same word in the Jeremiah 31 passage. It is translated statutes, but ordinances in the Jeremiah, but it's the same Hebrew word. And so again, everything you laid out there, the bear, Orion, these are constellations. And over the course of one year, they appear differently in the sky, but then they kind of reset, and you see the change. So there's a regularity there. There's a lawfulness to it. And so it's another reference to natural law. And so for me, it was great to learn science and become inspired in my secular humanist public education in America, become inspired about what kind of powerful things humans can do if we just set our mind to it and kind of dig in through chemistry and physics and biology